I have a very tight process for screening contractors. I put them through a whole lot of different things. I make them provide a whole bunch of documents. It's actually quite a lengthy process. And that's very good. So what you typically want to do when you're hiring on a new crew of contractors is you want to have a lengthy process for hiring them. You want to make them jump through a whole bunch of hoops. You want to put them through your whole machine. And you're almost hoping that they're going to float away and not do the stuff that you ask them, because then you just got rid of somebody that maybe wasn't super qualified for your business. So what I do initially, I won't go super in depth, but I have a meeting with them. I tell them to bring a bunch of documents to the meeting, things like a sample quote, sample scopes of work, pictures of their past work. I'm telling them to bring references, copies of their insurance, maybe like WCB clearance, like a few other things as well. If they bring all that stuff, I'm usually fairly impressed, because contractors usually don't really like to follow simple instructions. So it seems to me like I've been doing this a few years. I'm not an expert on it, but just from my experience, it's tough to even get them to bring the documents a lot of the time, or they'll fight you on it. So if they bring the documents, you want to check that stuff out, check the references, talk to people that have used them, really dig in. What I'm doing right now with this is a scope of work, or a sample quote scope of work from one of the new guys. I'm pretty sure I'm going to hire this guy tomorrow. But what you want to do is you want to walk through some of their current projects, like they have jobs on the go right now. So that's what I'm doing. I just set it up today. I'm walking through some of his jobs on Monday, just to have a close look. Like, are they clean? What do his contractors look like? How's the finishing? Like, just what's going on. I want to have a really close look to determine whether I really want to actually hire this guy. The other thing that I'm doing with him is that I have a couple different projects all starting together. I'm hiring 3 new crews, but 2 of them I know people that have used them. I'm still running them through the same process. But this one, he's unproven. I don't know anybody that's used him, so I'm starting him on the smallest renovation. It's still a decent size. It's about a $35,000 renovation. I'm gonna start him on something really small just to see how it goes. But so what I'm doing there is I'm walking through some of his current projects, so that's really nice. I definitely recommend doing that if possible. And again, if they're letting you walk through the projects. The other thing too is this guy, he's quoted on 3 houses for me now, and I haven't even hired him yet. That's definitely something that you also want to do, is you want to have them go through a whole bunch of houses, because if they keep on coming back to you after you walk them through houses, you see all their documents, you called all their people, you walk through a bunch of their stuff, they don't have a contract yet, and they're still answering your calls, that's probably somebody that's going to be a pretty decent fit for you to actually hire and work with. I'd say 70%, 80 to 90% of people would have already floated off a long time ago if they didn't get like one job after they did one quote. Maybe they won't even answer your call anymore. So it's really important. Have a process, have a lengthy process. I recommend it. You're gonna be a lot better off rather than having to jam some people together. A couple of these houses have actually been sitting for some time now, because I'm actually just following my own internal process of putting these pieces together. So that is extremely important. I would rather have a house sit there for an extra couple of weeks, even an extra month, just to make sure that the contractors that I hire on are going to be good. The work's going to be good. They're trustworthy. They're insured. They have all these things like in place. So it's super, super important. So definitely do that. The one thing that I thought was very interesting as well, and this is another reason why it's extremely important to screen them. After they give you the estimate and the quote, sit down with them and look at every single line item and say, okay, what is going on with these line items? Because a lot of times what contractors will do is they'll give you a very vague scope and estimate, and it'll just have like a number on it for how much they're going to charge you for the job. So another thing that I get my contractors to do is I get them to break down the estimate with 2 different parts. So one part is going to be labor costs. The other side is going to be material costs. So I actually want them to break down separately with 2 separate line items for labor and materials, just because it really helps you to audit like sort of where the money is going, rather than them trying to bury costs like in different areas. It's just something that's fairly vague. That is also extremely important. What I did last week, I guess it was like about 2 weeks ago now, so this is a decent, like kind of a lengthy process, but about 2 weeks ago I had the contractor, he came in here right where I'm sitting right now, same boardroom. He sat there, I sat there, and I pulled the quote out, and his pricing was like all fucked up, or it was like all messed up. So his pricing, like, because I always get 3 quotes, is another thing that I do. I always get 3 estimates on a job. So his estimate was like quite a bit higher, like way higher than the other two. So I sat him down and I said, okay, let's just run through this quote really quick, because some of these prices are like kind of crazy, you know, like I was kind of nice about it. I'm like, okay, let's like figure this out. And so the initial quote on this particular job was 48,000. So 48 grand was his estimate, his initial estimate on the job. So I sat down, and just by sitting there and telling him that his prices were out of whack and going line item by line item, like what is going on, when he left, the estimate was back down to 38,000. 38, yeah, sorry, there's two houses I did at the same time. So it started at 48, and then now it's down to 38. So I took $10,000 off of the rental budget just by literally sitting him down and saying, what's going on? The very first thing that this guy did is he went, oh yeah, there was a $4,500 something profit and something charge on here that, oh, that wasn't supposed to be there. Oh, Joe, and he's some other guy that he works with, Joe wasn't supposed to put that in there. And he went, scratched it out. I said, okay. And then I was like, well, let's keep going here, like let's figure this out. And so he went, oh, the flooring. When we were originally going through the property, there was sort of a debate about, I always usually use laminate for a lot of it. He said, oh, vinyl plank is a similar price, it's pretty much the same price. It's gonna be more durable, especially if you end up deciding to hold this as a rental, like whatever, it's gonna be the same price. So we said, okay, let's just go with the vinyl plank. So we put that on there. And then, so when I had him sitting down here in the boardroom, he said, oh, that is another thing that we can do to change the price. Okay, we don't need the vinyl plank now. We can go with the original plan and we can go with laminate. So he's like, yeah, so that's gonna take off another $3,500. I'm thinking like $3,500 of material, the difference in price between vinyl plank and laminate. Like, I'm no expert on pricing, but that seems a little weird. And then especially when we were putting this thing together initially, he's like, oh, it's the exact same price. I would recommend doing the vinyl plank instead of the laminate because it's more durable and it's, you know, the moisture it can absorb in a little better and all these like whatever things. And then the fact that he was trying to think of things that he can do on the fly to scratch a lot of the costs down because he knew that his costs were pretty high. The other thing is he doesn't really know me, I don't really know him, so he's like, oh, this might just be some guy, let's just see like what we can figure out. So everything is a negotiation, it's extremely important. So I was thinking like either A, this guy is not familiar at all with this business model and his pricing is just super weird and he just doesn't really know, so he's out there just like figuring like on the fly. So A, maybe it's a new business model for him, which is not, now that I've done some digging, that was my initial thought. New business model. Or B, he's just trying to, you know, inflate his pricing and just kind of see if he can sneak that through because we've never worked together before. And I'm like kind of younger, like whatever, like maybe I'm not super familiar with a lot of this stuff. So sometimes contractors will do that. The other thing that I've seen contractors do on some of my other projects is sometimes they will almost try to price themselves out of the job. They'll say like, oh, I'm kind of busy right now, so I don't really, this is internal kind of dialogue in their head. Like, I'm kind of busy, I don't really need another contract right now. You know, I'm just gonna like gouge this guy, and if he accepts it and wants to do it, then sure, I'll do it with him, but like he's gonna have to pay a premium for that. I've seen other contractors do that before, 100%. So they're like, okay, they try to just do that, and they say, okay, if it hits, it hits, and then I'm gonna make like an extra 10 grand like in my pocket if this idiot hires me. Like that's the main thing. So there's a few different scenarios. So anyway, so we sat down, line item by line item, scratch. He sent me, so basically then he left, so we didn't really hatch it out right then, but I'm like, okay, this is crazy, this pricing's crazy. I told him what my budget was. I'm like, no, I need this down to like 38,000, I think I said. So that's my budget, 38,000. He's like, okay, well, let me take this back, talk to Joe. There was all this weird stuff in there that shouldn't have been in there. It wasn't me, it must have been some other guy, but like, we'll figure this out. So he leaves. The next day, he writes me an email and it just said, yep, we'll do it for the budget there. So I think it was $10,000 or $12,000 less. And this isn't a very big property. Like this house is only 859 square feet. That's, I think, roughly 850 square feet. So that's the other reason why the difference in price between the laminate and the vinyl plank was like $3,500 or something. Like it's like a tiny little house. But anyway, so he sent me the email the next day and he said, okay, we're gonna be able to do it. We're gonna hit the budget and it's fine. It's okay. Let's move ahead or whatever. So that's what I'm doing. So basically what I'm doing right now, and why I sort of put this video on to start with this. So what I'm doing now, this is the new estimate that he sent me. There was no pricing broken down on here though. The initial one that he sent me, it did have the line item pricing. The first one he sent me didn't, so I said, I want to see the material and the labor, so send it again. So then he sent it again. But then the new one he sent with the on budget one didn't have the price breakdown again. So now basically what I'm doing is I'm comparing on my laptop. I have the original estimate with the price breakdown of like 48,000, and then I have this estimate of the 38,000. And so I'm literally line item by line iteming, like checking off to make sure it's there. Oh, something's missing here, whatever. So then on Monday, when I go to walk through some of his other jobs, we can actually really figure this out. And as long as I still have to finish calling the references and then also seeing some of his projects, as long as all that stuff checks out, I'm gonna hire him and use him on this little small job. But at the same time, this process is great because now he knows, like, well, he can't just sneak a bunch of stuff in. Like, I'm actually looking at the stuff, like, in detail. I have a pen, I'm circling things. If there's some weird comma there that I'm like, why is there a semicolon there? I'm circling it. I'm like, why is there a semicolon here? Like, I'm actually looking. So now he'll know for next time. The other good thing is I had 3 quotes from 3 different crews. So he knows that and I told him, like, I always get 3 quotes, always get 3 quotes, like, always. So just so he's super clear. So he's not like, oh, maybe I'm the only show in town here and I can just up the price. He knows I always get the things. He knows that I'm doing more volume. I purposely walked him through 3 properties. 2 of them I already own, and I told him that I already own the 2. So he knows that I'm actually doing things and doing deals. So I'm building up my legitimacy to him. Like, so it's all these things. It's like kind of a negotiation and kind of a sale at the same time. But a new relationship. So this sort of sets the tone, in my opinion, of the relationship that I'm gonna have with him. If he works out, like, I'm all for working with people for a long period of time. You learn each other's systems, you learn how each other operates. It's just super nice. I can have him through some more jobs. I'm happy to do more and more jobs with him. I was already sort of future pacing that to him. I'm saying, okay, well, if this makes sense, I have lots of work, right? And he's like, oh, well, if that's the case, I'll put a crew together and only put them on your projects, and just you can have one of my full-time crews and stuff. So I'm future pacing because I want him to give me a good price, and then I don't want him to do any weird stuff. So there's a lot of, it's kind of intricate. Like, I've been doing this now, I'm in really only my 2nd year of house flipping, so I'm learning a lot of this stuff as I'm going here, and I'm downloading data, and I'm putting systems together for my businesses, and all these little things, they add up to a lot. So this, if I would have done this, if I wouldn't have checked, if I would have just said, okay, you're hired, I want my other 2 crews to go over here and this and that, like, that would have been over $10,000 that would have been out of my pocket at the end of the day. And it would have been directly into his pocket. Like, that would have put one of his kids, like, through college, like, in this one house, right? So it's super important to have these systems in place because the contractors will do some weird stuff. So very important. The other thing is, it's really good to keep this stuff organized. So he sent me a copy of his contract, his construction contract. So I haven't read it yet. I'll probably do that after I finish up with this. I have my own contract. In my opinion, it's always good to control the paperwork if possible. So I'll probably get him to use my contract instead of using his contract, but I'm gonna read his anyways and just compare the 2. And you never know, like, maybe I'll like some stuff in his and I'll like to put it in mine or something, right? So it's always good. So screen diligently, really look at the numbers, look at the quotes. I don't really know that much about construction. Like, I'm not a contractor. I used to be an industrial mechanic, or like in millwrighting when I used to work in mining, in the trades, but it's completely different than this kind of like residential construction. So I have not a clue what most of this shit even is, you know what I mean? But it's still really good. Check, I have a general idea of what a lot of it is, but I'm not like a construction expert. But check the line items, make sure everything checks out, make sure they're not trying to slip any weird things in there, do any weird stuff, because at the end of the day, if he got away with that, like, can you even be mad? Like, everybody's trying to make money out here, right? They all have their own tactics. Some of the contractors that I deal with, like my main contractor, like, he's pretty freaking good at negotiating. He has a lot of cool little tactics to kind of try to get your stuff. Like, everybody's playing the game here, right? So you have to have the diligence, you have to have the skills, you have to learn to negotiate. all this stuff is all skills based. So everything like on your purchase, it's all negotiation for your profit. On your renovation contract, this is a renovation contract. This is an active negotiation right now. What I can probably do is get the price down even more. You know, like still, like I may or may not try to get the price down even more than my budget, like depending on how everything looks at the end. So the purchase is a negotiation, the renovations is a negotiation, the sales a negotiation. So you need to learn a lot of the skills, which I'm starting to learn more and more now, right? Like there's really no ceiling on that. I'm lucky enough that I get to learn alongside a guy like Stefan Arnio that I moved across the country to be near, because he is so good at all this stuff, and he's been really good to me, and I'm learning so much from people like him. So getting around the right people to learn a lot of these skills is crucial. If I was on my own without being around these people, I'd be learning a lot slower. I'd probably get there eventually, but it would probably be 10 years from now. In 2 years, I'm probably 20 years ahead of where I would be if I wasn't getting the education and getting the skills from people that are doing it. So anyway, so be very diligent. Screen. I know I said it a lot, but that's a good way for you guys to learn as well. Screen. Have a process. Have a lengthy process. Screen a bunch of contractors together. Like take like 10, 15 contractors, and then just run them all through this machine. And then like literally only 2 or 3 are gonna end up getting spit out the other side. And all the other ones are gonna fuck off, and they're gonna float off, and they're gonna not want to work with you. And so just have a lengthy process. Get them to jump through all the hoops. Make them cross a long distance to hit a small target. The story of Odysseus. Make them do that, because those guys are going to be the real talent. And if this guy works out, this potentially, again, like I already mentioned, this could be a partnership that'll last for several years with this guy. Maybe I'll get him on bigger, slowly. The gradient will go up, steeper. Get him onto bigger projects if he has good work. So, anyways. Hopefully you got some value out of this. That's what I'm doing right now. What time is it here in Winnipeg? It's about 8:00 p.m. I've been, grinding all day. One of the rentals, actually this property here, I was there. We had a storm in Winnipeg here. I was in Vancouver over the last weekend. Trees down everywhere. I haven't been there in a couple of days because I've been pretty tied up. I just started another deal and getting all that going. But I went there today, a couple hours before I'm doing this video here, and like there's a bunch of trees down in the yard. I couldn't even get in the house. There's trees piled everywhere. So, but yeah, anyway, so yeah, really cool. So have a good process. Be diligent. Run this like a business. Even if you're just doing your first deal, do this like a business. Like set it up from the beginning like a business. I would recommend get a bookkeeper on day one. That's something that I'm going through right now, as my first couple of projects were a little bit unorganized. So get a bookkeeper on day one is my second piece of advice. Take my word for it. It's going to save you, a little bit of headache later trying to figure out like where all this stuff came from. So bookkeeper day one, completely off topic here, but the contractors, have a process, screen a lot of them, and just be really diligent, and you're going to really thank yourself later on, and that's how you're going to find some real talent for your team. Our businesses typically don't really surpass the level of the quality of the people that we have around us or that are helping us grow the business. So make sure you have some good talent. Don't take shit from people. There's a lot of contractors out there. Even if you go 3/4 of the way through this process, just kind of like a negotiation. Typically, the longer the negotiation lasts, the more committed both sides are to make a deal. That's not the case when you're hiring contractors. If you're 3/4 of the way there, then all of a sudden they just shit the bed on you, just get rid of them. Like just get somebody else in, restart, go slow, take an extra couple of weeks. Like I'm starting these deals late, like I already mentioned, because I'm doing this properly. But definitely do that. Hope you had a little bit of value here.